Thank you for listening to episode 7 of the Kindness Rebellion. In this episode, I talked to Euphoria, a stripper from here in our own Utah. She has performed in many clubs across Utah, Colorado, and even in Oregon and Washington. We have an awesome conversation about the nature of sex work and how it's sort of viewed within our society, and also how it's viewed personally by her. And then we also discuss all sorts of topics ranging from agriculture, the localization of our systems from globalization, and even the internet and mental health issues. So I think you'll really enjoy this podcast. Please make sure to like and share it, or do whatever it is you do to show me you like it. Thank you so much. Euphoria, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. I had a whole lot of fun just kind of seeing you posting on social media and stuff and kind of bringing up bigger concepts that I think people are either just unable to communicate about or are really scared to communicate about. For one thing, kind of your views on sex work and your views on, our healthcare in America, especially in regards to COVID and stuff like that. So since that's kind of what jump-started my interest in bringing you on the podcast, I kind of wanted to start just with those basic concepts and things like that. Because one of the things we talked about is can we change the world?
Yeah.
Do you think we can change the world?
Yes. And I think that we're doing it currently. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I also want to say thank you for having me
on
the podcast.
Of course.
But I think that we're currently changing it as it is, and whether that be in a good direction or a bad direction is, an entirely different topic.
Yeah, it's kind of all both is happening at once for sure.
Yeah.
Because I like how you acknowledge that we are currently changing the world.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when you're oh, we can change the world, it's no, you can't. It's well, like you said, we are actively changing it.
We're doing it.
So I guess I'm curious in what ways you think we should change the world.
It's not something that we'd be able to do as individuals. It would have to be a collective effort. Mm-hmm. And that effort would have to begin a little bit higher on the totem pole than us personally. Mm-hmm. But, it's a good thing to buy the organic vegetables like we were talking about, not shopping with Amazon and...
We're trying not to.
Yeah. But... I don't know. We just got to be a little bit of an anarchist. Everyone's got it in us. We just need to uprise and be pissed off and see what happens afterwards. I don't know if there's a direction it needs to go. It just needs to change in some way.
I think that's kind of where I'm at too. In the end, really all we need to do is just have more freedom to be able to change the world, right?
Yeah.
We think of all the different power structures we come in conflict with as soon as we try to make any sort of meaningful change. Because even trying to buy organic groceries and stuff like we were talking about, because I've had people tell me that. They're well, man, if you think agriculture should be organic, then you should buy organic, pull the market that way. But for one thing, what even is organic? When we're buying organic, what are they actually saying it is? We have no real understanding of that. So I think that's where your point that it needs to be systemic and larger change makes sense. We have to have a clear understanding of what we are trying to do and what we want to have changed.
Yeah. Well, and as far as organic foods go, I don't know if what is organic first of all? And it's okay, does that mean no GMOs? Maybe GMOs are a good thing, but maybe they're also a bad thing because it's, they're patenting, Monsanto's patenting all sorts of fruits and vegetables, and then...
Oh, yeah, that's a weird concept, right?
No, for sure.
How are we trying to own, produce in that way? Where we're creating our own produce and stuff. That's really interesting to me, actually.
It's been I don't know about here in Utah, but just, other farmers that I've seen talk about it on the internet, having their crop, copyrighted and taken from them in a way because there's cross-pollination between the GMO seeds and the non-GMO, and then all of a sudden, farmers a few miles away are accidentally growing part Monsanto,
Yeah.
like corn or
And how are they supposed to even avoid that, right? Like,
there's no way to avoid it other than, you know, just killing Monsanto and whoever else.
Or killing all the pollinators, right? That's what we need to do. That's corporate espionage that those pollinators are engaging in.
They need to be arrested, not the farmers.
It's interesting because I've actually heard kind of about that type of colonization that's been happening in kind of agricultural space. And I really think that like one of the main ways we need to change the world is starting with our food and starting with our agriculture. I don't know. There's things that you and your partner have been doing that I really, really like. Just the fact that you have your own like property and you've been trying to, you know, grow your own stuff if you can. You know, you've been trying to sort of cultivate that sort of independent lifestyle. And I think that's where you're saying like, we just got to be like anarchists in that way to really start. We just got to start saying like, we need people to stop telling us what we're okay to do. Yeah. Like we just got to make mistakes and figure it out along the way. Right.
Yeah. And kind of unlearning what is traditional around that. But especially like bringing up the property is our recent thing. 'Cause we haven't been, you know, stationary for too long.
Yeah.
Instead of gardening this year, we decided to just dedicate our entire lawn to whatever indigenous plants want to grow there.
Yeah.
And housing, you know, the insects and whatever else. And we'll go and pull out the things that aren't supposed
that are causing trouble or whatever.
Or, you know, just aren't indigenous or like...
That's important.
Grow here. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've actually heard like one of the... You know, when you're planting crops or even having just like indoor plants and stuff, people are trying to get rid of like all their insects and all the things that live there. And it's like, you have to have that biodiversity. And it's weird that we take like exotic species and just plop them in a desert and say like, waste a ton of water trying to keep them alive and stuff. So I think there's a lot of value in that. Yeah. And I just like that, you know, both of you are really trying to just live independently. In fact, like, even talking to you previously just about your career as a stripper, it sounds like I had all of these preconceived notions of what that might be before talking to you about it. And then hearing you be like, actually, it's a lot more independent where, I mean, I guess you could tell me more about that. Because like, do you feel like you have a lot of freedom in that job where it's not like you're not reporting to bosses, you're not trying to report to someone, you're just doing what you can do? Yeah.
No, it's been good in that way, just because, you know, for the most part, you are like a sole contractor. There's some, I don't know if I'd say they're good or bad movements, but workers' movements in the industry to make strippers employees instead of, you know,
independent contractors or whatever they are.
Yeah. And so, you know, with that, all of a sudden everyone has to start like reporting their earnings to the government and paying taxes on it and all of that. But then it protects you in the way that if something happens to you on the job, you know, your employer has to
take care of you.
Yeah.
Right?
If you fall off the pole and lose all your teeth like that girl in Miami.
Oh, God. Yeah, that
She's
would
okay
not be
now.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. As long as she was able to get those teeth back and everything. I guess I didn't even think about that because part of me was just like excited that it was sort of a space where you could, you know, if they were treating you poorly, you could just be like, fuck you, I'm out of here, you know? And I guess there's value in that, but then also needing to be taken care of for any liabilities and stuff like that.
It's like a topic for me that I just don't even know where I fall with my opinion on it yet, because I enjoy, you know, just...
You enjoy the work.
Yeah, well, and I enjoy not having to report to a boss. I enjoy, you know, anything that I do or anyone else around me does is, you know, they're liable for that. I do my own thing. Like, I think there's a certain level of protection that comes with being a sole contractor. Yeah. As far as like the club goes, because if there is like shady things going on.
Yeah, you don't get in trouble for anything like
you're less involved in that aspect.
That is kind of nice.
Yeah, but there's, you know, another end of the stick where, you know, as a sole contractor working in strip clubs, you go, it's like contract work, and you pay to rent the space.
Oh, okay. Sort of like a salon kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of.
Oh, okay.
And so if we all became employees, the idea would be that we didn't need to pay house fees anymore, but then it would just like even out in some way, like the dances would be cheaper, or
interesting.
There just wouldn't be the same earning potential, I guess.
That's so interesting, because like I could see how it would be really valuable to just like have a steady protected job as an employee, but then kind of the lack of earning potential, like you were just describing, that's really the key motivator for you, isn't it? Because like you can make good money as a stripper, right? So that's kind of the most important thing. And I guess as soon as you're employed, then they can be like, well, we're only going to pay you $10 an hour. And man, that would change the industry completely.
Well, and I don't think they'd be able to take our tips from us in any way. But I don't know. I've worked at 6 different clubs, and all of them are run a little bit differently. But in Oregon, or at least Portland, Oregon, everyone who's a stripper is an employee. And it still functioned like most of the other clubs that I've worked at. But at the end of the night, they were like, okay, did you at least make this amount of money? Because they would like subsidize it and like give you cash out of the register or something.
Interesting. Okay.
So that was the only difference that I really ran into in that aspect. But I have very limited experience in the field of being an employed stripper instead of contracted. Yeah,
that's interesting. I think that's actually another part of it that I thought was really cool. It's just the fact that like you could go on some sort of like road trip or like vacation, and then in order to make money, you could just walk into pretty much any strip club, right? And work there. So that kind of nomadic aspect to it was actually really interesting for me too. Cause it's nice being an employee and being like, it's not nice being an employee, let's face it. It's not.
I don't, I wouldn't agree with that.
There's a nice sense of security that you can have with it. But in the end, I think it is more valuable to be able to have more control over your life in that way. And I think that's really cool. And that actually kind of leads me into the bigger question with stripping and kind of sex work in general. And actually, I wanted to ask real quick, do you feel like stripping is considered sex work?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Awesome. I kind of thought so too, but obviously it's not the same as prostitution or anything like that. But I think all aspects of sex work can be valued in the same way.
Yeah.
But I guess what I was saying with that is one of the things I'm really curious about is I'm really against sort of the commodification of human beings in general, right? So that's kind of where my opinions on sex work land. Is I understand you got to do what you got to do to survive, and especially if you're good at it, do it, right? And I've seen you talk about this online too, just kind of turning someone into a money-making machine through their body, right? And I kind of wanted to get your opinion on that and see if the ability to be working on your own and like having that independence sort of helps protect you from being commodified in a harmful way.
Well, like through my perspective, any aspect of sex work is akin to a therapist, at least in my mind. There's certain things humans need to be happy and survive. Emotional connection and someone to talk to and process things with. Like a therapist is one aspect of that. And then there's an aspect where people want companionship and, I guess entertainment. That's where it kind of comes into the... Like...
It's kind of mixing all those together, isn't it? That's interesting. So do you think it helps protect you from like, feeling just like an object?
I think that it really depends on who your client base is.
That makes a big difference, I bet.
In my personal experience, I've met a lot of just like good people who are just,
just wanting connection.
Yeah, just wanting connection.
Sexual intimacy.
Yeah, intimacy. And there are times when it's usually like bachelor parties or like work parties where they're like, oh, fuck yeah, naked women.
Yeah,
like,
kind of be...
just being perverts. And and that's the other thing that's great about being an independent contractor and choosing who you will and won't take as a
and who your
client. Because if
clientele is.
someone's a dick, then I'm like, I won't even say anything. I just like walk up and stand up and walk away. So
okay, so I think that's the part of it that I was really interested in, is because, you know, I've seen working in like a customer service role as an employee and not an independent contractor, I have to just take shit from people, you know, and I kind of assumed that in any aspect of sex work, you have to operate in a similar way.
Yeah.
It's just like, this person's doing something that makes me uncomfortable, it's making me feel like, you know, not making me feel good or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just have to deal with it because I'm trying to make money right now.
Yeah.
But you feel like you're able to control that and kind of handle that?
Well, like I said, being a or independent contractor, whatever you want to call it, gives me the opportunity to avoid those customers. And I mean, there are nights where it's, you know, not very busy and you're like, I guess I'll talk to you. Yeah, I guess I'll talk to you even though you're kind of a pervert.
Yeah.
Then you start playing a character and you just, you know, it's almost like dissociating.
Yeah.
And
I've kind of heard that.
Yeah, and it's like, that makes it sound like it's not a good time. And it's not necessarily a good time, but it's not necessarily a bad time. It's just like getting into a character.
You're
and just
coping
feeling
with
like, you're so funny.
Yeah,
like, you know. And so that's an aspect of it. But there's a lot of, not a ton, but there's a large minority of people involved in sex work who don't have the freedom to do that because of, you know, pimps or, you know, managers or anything like that. So I do have a very limited, you know, perspective on how that goes. And you know, there's people who are survival sex workers, which are people who are only in the industry because they don't have any other options.
Oh, I see.
And, you know, it's probably a different... it's
a different story for them.
Yeah, different story for them, for sure. But I've been incredibly lucky to be in the position I am, and also, you know, just not really take shit from people.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of part of your personality too. You're able to. I've noticed you have a lot of self-dignity. You know, you're able to say like, no, I'm not going to allow people to treat me like that. And I think it's cool that there is a space in sex work for you to be able to have more autonomy over like your body and what's happening to you. Because, you know, even like kind of that persona that you were talking about where you just kind of have to disassociate a little bit and become someone else just to get through the scenario. Like I have to do that in customer service, like all the time. But I can't, if they keep treating me like shit, I can't just I can, but I have a lot more consequences. If I just decide to be like, you know what, you're a piece of shit, leave, like go away. But you can, I feel like it's cool that you can do that. And I think there's something valuable there with sex work in general. And I think that's good because I'm always worried about just commodifying people at all, you know? I'm always worried about the idea of, I mean, kind of take OnlyFans, right? There's people who all they have to do, right, is they're just like, I just take some pictures of my tits and I make pretty decent money from it, you know, and I can survive and get by. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. And then I see people, or I've heard of people who are on OnlyFans who it became like this sort of lifeline for them. And so they started having to do things that like they weren't comfortable with, like, you know, like maybe feces play or something like that, because like those are the people that are paying more, you know?
Well, and when you put a price on something, you know, just tie back into the commodification of people. Is it's like, okay, realistically, how much money would it take to convince you to play with feces on camera? And I feel like
it would be a lot.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I touched the mic.
You're fine.
I'm like, good $3,000. Like, why the fuck not? I'm not gonna put it in my mouth.
You could pay. You could pay for some good hand sanitizer after that point.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of where the line kind of blurs for sex workers. It's like, you know, are you doing it because you want to do it? I mean, nobody wants to work, I don't think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But, like, you know, I feel like that's where it becomes an issue when, like, so much money is offered that you would do things that you wouldn't do otherwise.
You're sort of selling your dignity at that point. And I can't really judge anyone for doing that at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah. No,
we've curated a really disgusting system in general where people are always doing something that they don't want to do or feel like they shouldn't have to do just to make enough money to survive.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why I can't sit and condemn sex work at large or as a whole, because at the end of the day, it's people just trying to make it by, and they're just good at being able to connect with people with their bodies.
Yeah. And I feel like there's like, as much as it's, you know, physically intimate, there's also like an emotional intimacy aspect of it, that it's like, you know, there's clubs that I've worked at where you are not like, you have to stay relatively covered unless you're, you know, doing like a champagne room or whatever.
Yeah.
And at that point, like, you're making an emotional connection with someone before they pay you. Well, I guess even with clothes on, strippers are hot, but
yeah, for real.
You know, there is like an aspect of that where it's just emotional connection and people needing to talk to someone that they're not going to have to, I don't know, like there's a certain level of intimacy, or I guess freedom and intimacy that comes with going to a strip club and just paying someone to listen to you talk about your dead daughter, or you know, like I've heard some really sad stories.
I'm really curious about that. But do you feel like those moments are authentic? Like it's not marred by the transactional pretense or whatever?
For me, I feel that way, but there's been a few times where I've had customers who are to the point where they're almost in tears, and I'm also welling up, and they're like, and I know you're just listening because I'm paying you. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, like, kind of, but also like,
I am listening.
I'm listening.
I'm here with you.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I think that gives it a lot more value in general. And it makes me sad that there's a lot of people that are already lacking that.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think it's good that, you know, sex work can co-opt that and be a safe space for people that are just struggling emotionally and things like that. Yeah. And then it also makes me really sad that there's a lot of people struggling emotionally and they have nowhere to go.
Yeah. No, and
I see your connection to being a therapist now.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
When you get people a little, you know, people are usually drinking and people just start saying things. You know, yeah.
You kind of have to roll with that, I bet. You know, there's so many people can react so many different ways when they're drunk. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
And that kind of brings me to wonder, how does that, what are the emotional and like personal aspects of sex work just for you? Like for you personally? Because I do wonder whether being a sex worker is just emotionally draining. And like, I wonder how that affects intimacy with your partner and things like that. Can you kind of describe any of that for me?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's more like it's emotionally draining in the way that you are taking on so much emotional labor. It's not even, you know, like the aspect of being sexualized and hypersexualized or whatever. It's like you just meet so many people that are just, you know, just vying for any type of human connection.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, to tie it back into the therapist thing, it's like, yeah, you can tell your therapist that you're really fucking sad, but is she gonna get naked and hug you?
Probably not. No, it's a whole new scenario there.
And so like it is emotionally taxing, and I mean beyond the customers, it's also, you know, working with other girls in the same space who are dealing with the same types of emotional labor, and then also the other things that kind of unfortunately follow the industry, which is drug addiction and you know, things like that. And so it's emotionally taxing, just in the aspect of the girls and the customers. As far as like intimacy with my partner, it does not bother it unless they want to just lament about something that I just don't have the patience to sit there and
just don't have the energy for, like after a long day or something. I could see that. I could see that
complaining, I guess, and that's maybe that's a toxic trait of mine.
I mean,
like I sold all of my emotional labor for the day. Go talk to someone else.
I sold all of it.
It's gone.
I mean, there's something in that though, because obviously you can't just be a shoulder to cry on all day long. Yeah. Right. And I think it's interesting to hear that emotional labor tied in with the sexual labor too, because there's just two aspects that you're having to deal with potentially all day long, right? And so I think I don't think there's anything like, maybe it's toxic in large amounts, but I think it's good that you're aware of it, first of all.
I just need to be more conscious about reserving the, I guess, emotional longevity to, hear out the people who are in my personal life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just my partner. It's kind of,
everyone
almost
in your personal
everyone.
life, right?
Well, and like the other girls at the strip club, even when, there's some girl in the back crying because she only made $200. And you're oh my God.
We can't focus on this right now.
Yeah.
There's someone else crying about their dead grandma right now.
Yeah.
I think that's a kind of a cool aspect that I remember talking with you about as well. Just kind of the solidarity in that group. Like, do you feel like you build up pretty good female relationships within that culture?
It's, I feel like it's a lot different from any relationships with women that I've made outside of sex work. But I was actually talking to my partner about this not too long ago. But I remember the first time walking into a strip club locker room and just overhearing the other girls, and it's like there are no boundaries on what those friendships and relationships look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're, like, I guess kind of unfortunately, exotic or stripping comes with, it attracts a certain group of people, and people who are usually, mentally ill or neurodivergent in some way, or, they grew up in poverty, or recently out of an abusive relationship, or, everyone has some type of quirk or trauma, but there's like, if it's a Venn diagram, a lot of us are fitting into the center of it. And so it's been cool just to, make connections with people like that, but it's also, because of the way the industry is, you'll have these very deep connections with people, and then they might just be gone the next day because they found something to do. Yeah, they might have moved without telling anyone, like just crazy stuff like that. And so it's like, as much as they're friendships, it's also just like,
they're not really built to last.
Yeah, and it's very straight. Like, it's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't like experienced it themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's like the girls at the strip club, I mean, girls that I don't even see anymore, know more about me than like my parents do. You know? Like, just even my partner in some aspects, just with stuff that, it's like,
because you're in that space of being, pretty vulnerable in a lot of ways. And so you kind of that's kind of interesting though. You can really bleed out to people and know that it's probably not really going to bite you back in the ass, especially if they're just leaving the next day, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the topics that people are vulnerable about are just like at least one other girl in the room, and I'm talking about the locker room in specific. That is like an ecosystem of its own. But it's like, you could be talking about mental health struggles, relationship struggles, abortion, money struggles, just, anything. And at least one other girl in that room is going to have some type of experience that she can relate to yours and kind of, it's like
and
help each other through that
there.
moment. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there's some people who are assholes.
Yeah.
Like, there's
you can't
some real
avoid them.
Bitches.
Yeah, that's just the way it is, right?
Yeah.
I think that's totally fine. And I like that. I think it's good to know that, I don't know, being on the outside and never having like worked or even participated in that industry in really any way, like, I'm just fed assumptions, and I'm fed like these ideas that, like, especially growing up in our Mormon culture, right? Like, it's like, that's just taboo. That's like evil, border, like exactly evil. But it's cool to hear that there is like raw human emotion. There are people being real, actually connecting and developing meaningful experiences all throughout that. I think that's really cool. I'm glad.
Great experience.
Yeah, and overall, do you like it?
Yeah, I don't see myself doing anything different for as long as I, can do it. But I enjoy dancing, and I enjoy meeting new people, and hearing different perspectives, and just meeting people from other walks of life. But then there's also the opportunity on the side of like the customers to, you know, talk to people who are successful. And I'm like, okay, what'd you do? Like, how do I emulate it?
And figuring out how to kind of grow in that space. That's really cool. I'm wondering, do you think, because you said that sort of in that space, you really find a lot of people that, you know, dealt with poverty, right? That maybe dealt with like sexual abuse or just various like toxic aspects within their life. I'm wondering if we sort of address the overarching problems in our society, like poverty, healthcare, things like that. Do you think there would even be much of a need or maybe like a market for sex work at that point? I guess it's kind of a weird roundabout question, like, but I'm wondering...
After the downfall of capitalism?
Ideally, right? Yeah. I don't know, because like maybe if it's like an apocalyptic scenario, people are just going to still be searching for intimacy and things like that. I guess what I'm really wondering is I do want to see us build a society that can provide like spiritual meaning for people and like help cultivate like environments of spiritual meaning. And so I guess I'm kind of curious if sex work or if that environment is built and created, do you think sex work would even really exist for very long?
I've been asked this question before.
Really?
Yes. And I really don't know where, you know, what the answer would be.
It's hard to guess. Yeah, of course.
But I mean, everyone is looking for intimacy, and whether or not they're going to the strip club for that is, you know, another thing entirely. But there's a demographic of people who come into the strip club and they're there for, you know, the company and intimacy because they are disabled or mentally ill, neurodivergent, whatever. You know, like they have a hard time making organic connections with people. Yeah. And so as sad as I guess it is, is it's like, you know, a place where these people can come and they, you know, can pay someone to just be their friend, listen to them. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that the fact that, you know, like I said, the nakedness is also probably...
It also is a nice factor.
Yeah, it's a nice factor. For sure.
It adds to it.
And it sounds a little bit dark in a way too, but it's like the things that I've been told by customers before, I'm like, if you said that to any type of professional, you would probably be put away or, you know,
kicked out or some shit, right?
Yeah, like get hospitalized or arrested. And it's just kind of, you know, the girls feel safe because there's security in these places and you know,
they're used to the environment already.
But yeah, so those people, you know, in the perfect world where we aren't just being monetized, would probably, you know, still come to do their thing.
I can kind of see what you're saying though, because like, it's really, I mean, I'm sure it's very hard for someone who, you know, maybe is disabled, maybe even like disfigured or something like that, and they're just, they are just seeking intimacy, like, and even sexual intimacy. I think we don't realize how important sexuality is in people's lives because we really do try to suppress that as a culture, right? Or even just like, I think it's interesting that we sort of do tuck it away into strip clubs, right? And then even build up assumptions about that place in general. But, you know, people understanding their own sexuality is really important and is really necessary, right? And, you know, maybe the strip club isn't the best way to get it or whatever, but it's definitely going to be a starting place for people who have just been sort of cast out or just never really paid attention to. Yeah. So I think that's valuable still.
Well, and I, like, you know, post-capitalism, you know, it's just like hard to even imagine what the structure of that would be like. But there's also a lot of people that come into strip clubs because they, like, they're truckers or, you know, like they don't, their lifestyle doesn't allow them to maintain like a organic relationship with another person.
They're out on the road all the time.
Yeah, they're just gone for so long, or, you know, there's just a lot of different aspects to that. And, you know, I'm assuming in this post capitalist world, there won't be the rich businessmen that come in, but they're kind of dicks anyway. So.
Yeah. So who needs them?
Yeah, but I think there's a part of stripping, which I don't, sex work aside, like the performative aspect of like pole dancing and stuff. I don't know if we're just bartering things, if anyone's going to come and like share their potatoes to watch me like do a backflip on the pole. But I'd like to think that there's some value in that. You know?
There is. And it's I can see how it can also be like artistic expression in a way as well. And I don't think any society that we end up building after the inevitable downfall of capitalism, we can't lose art and we can't lose honest expression. And I think we'll find ways to, make sure that everyone has the basic necessities so that they can still continue to do what is valuable and what they find beautiful in the world. One thing that I really liked that you said was that there's always going to be a need for intimacy. Because I was talking with my cousin the other day, and he was talking about, he's like, I feel like I'm trying to, find someone and, just develop intimacy in a relationship. And then I'm hanging out with you right now, who's been in a relationship with Alyssa for 9 years, right? He's like, I feel like you're just on the other side of this wall right now. And what I told him, and what I kind of realized in that moment is I was like, we're still the same because I'm still searching for intimacy and closeness every day.
Yeah.
Like every day I'm trying to find that sort of understanding and, connection, even with Alyssa, who I've been with for 9 years. Yeah, it's easier to probably pull that out because we've, gone through so many situations in life, but that doesn't mean I'm still not looking for it.
Yeah.
And I like that because even if we do find some way, and like, first of all, we'd have to even argue whether the state or whatever systems we build could even provide an environment where we build intimacy and connection, right? But let's say it does and we figured it out. At the end of the day, everyone is still trying to find meaning and trying to find intimacy. And I think that's kind of cool that you said that. Yeah. I can see where that's really valuable. So I really hope we can end capitalism. I feel like we keep talking about it.
We haven't even like gotten into the topic and we're just like already imagining the end.
It's like, okay, time to build new systems and stuff. I don't know. I feel like we're really in a post-industrialist society. We're really on the point of destroying ourselves, right? So, I mean, do you think we should even end capitalism, first of all?
What we have currently, I wouldn't even consider capitalism. What do you mean by that? In the dictionary sense, just like in the same way when you're like, hell yeah, communism. People are like, look how that worked out for China. And
it's like,
that's not
quite communism.
So, but the structure, the system that we have currently definitely needs to burn down. And I was talking to my partner about this and they were like, okay, well, what are we going to put in place? And I'm like, I don't know, but I do know that like the bigger it gets, the
bigger the fallout.
Yeah. Well, and also it's just like things in motion stay in motion. And so until we decide to end it, it's just going to continue the way it is.
Yeah.
So it should definitely end,
right?
But I don't even know if I'd consider it capitalism at this point.
I think that's a good point because, in its basic sense, capitalism, really all we're doing, capitalism is trying to acquire capital, right? It's trying to attain profit. And then we've developed a system that, yes, is capable of attaining and amassing so much profit, right? I thought it was a good point that, this current system really isn't capitalism in its most basic sense, but it is capitalism in its most extreme sense.
Yeah.
And it is very it's just gotten so mutated and grotesque, especially in the way that these corporations and things have been able to influence government to help them grow more profits and siphon more profits from the people.
Well, and it's like the thing that confuses me in that is like, in my mind, that would be socialism if the government is redistributing wealth to help
anything,
something.
right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's capitalist socialism, right? It's funneling it all to the corporations.
Yeah. So it's, I don't even know what I'd call it at this point.
It is really gross.
It's a bastardization of whatever humans were supposed to do with the economy.
Yeah. And I think, like, we've also gotten to a weird point where I think people think that this is, like, natural. This is like, oh, this phenomenon that we're experiencing right now is like just like a normal aspect of nature. But what we don't realize is that we're actually, like, artificially holding up this system. I mean, think about it. Like, COVID just barely, right? Like, brought the entire world economy to its knees.
Yeah.
And then we had to artificially pump it back to life with giving everybody stimulus checks and just trying to get people to consume again. And I think, I don't know, we're seeing that there's got to be a better way. I mean, we're already talking about, like, how it's just going to end itself and essentially like obliterate itself because we can't have endless growth on finite resources, right? I feel like there's a question in there somewhere. I mean, do you think we should even be, like, working to end capitalism? Do you think, I guess, actually, this is kind of, you asked me earlier what I think the vision for Kindness Rebellion is, right? I'm tired of seeing revolutions and rebellions that are completely founded on destroying and, you know, putting scars upon everybody involved.
Yeah.
I understand that indefinitely there's going to be, like, there will be a power struggle no matter what, right? But I want to see if there are ways that we can rebel with kindness, with connection, with community.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you think we can do that. And, do you think we can do that?
I definitely do.
Yeah.
I feel like I make an effort to do that in my daily life.
Yeah.
Just by evading the IRS.
Yeah.
Also, like, back to the lawn or the yard.
Yeah.
Another, and this is something that I am, like, strangely political about.
Yeah.
Is the water consumption to grow a lawn and things
so
like
dumb.
that. And it's like, you know, I'm just thinking of what my personal impact
can be,
as far as the rebellion goes. And I'm like, fuck it. I'm not watering the lawn.
Yeah.
Like, we're not doing grass in this family.
We don't need to be freaking pumping and wasting water just to have something look aesthetically pleasing. And that's what we already described as, like, kind of grotesque.
Environmentally, I guess just irresponsible to, you know, suffocate all of the indigenous plants that are needed by the pollinators. And I know we are on capitalism. I feel like it's just
this is really tied and entrenched with each other.
Yeah, all of it's the same thing in my mind. And then it sounds like I'm going on to different topics. But it's like, you know, we're going through a drought here in Utah.
Yeah, it's bad.
And instead of telling people, hey, like, maybe don't water your lawns, they're like, okay, these are the approved times for lawn watering.
Kind of structure it out so you can keep primming up and prepping your better homes and gardens.
There's, like, one act of kindness rebellion, I think, that we can do. Not as kind to the HOAs, I'm sure, but
fuck them.
You know, just kinder to the environment and kinder to yourself to not spend all that time stressing about grass.
I think that's good, honestly. I think that's kind of the places that we have to start. I mean, we have to think about, you know, Russell Brand talks about some of the ways that we could just rebel right now against the insane power structures that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Is don't pay your mortgage, you know? Yeah, like there's things like that. It's like as soon as you try to attack financial interests or just by, like, opting out, you realize how much power you have in that single moment, right? And so even something as simple as just, like, I'm not going to sit and stress over trying to make my lawn look like everybody else's. I'm just going to work with what the land is providing and allow it to be that way and helping pollinators in the area. I think it sounds silly or like it's not doing enough, but at the end of the day, you're doing a part, right? You're
definitely
helping.
I'm just realizing how silly it sounds, like, vocalizing that to anyone but my partner.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know.
I think those small changes and those shifts in our mindset are what's going to be building up the momentum for change.
Yeah.
Because, like, I could say like, yeah, just stop paying your mortgage. That's how we're really going to fight this rebellion, right?
Well, I mean, if enough people got on the on the bandwagon for that, that would definitely.
That would be a mass land grab, literally. Like, people would just all of a sudden say, you don't get to decide that I'm living here on your dime, you know?
Yeah.
I live here, I exist here, I cultivate this space. I'm now going to just be fully responsible for it and not try to cater to some bank that's telling me what to do or anything like that, right? And then also even just paying taxes, right? Like, if your taxes are not... Yeah. If we can see that our tax dollars are doing nothing but filling... fulfilling militaristic action and
subsidizing, the dairy industry because people were trying to make an impact on that, and then they're like, oh shit, dairy sales went down. I think we need to
boost that up.
Yeah, give some money, even though people are clearly voting with their dollar.
Yeah, exactly. So there are still like. Even though these big changes will have to happen eventually, it has to start with people being like breaking out of the culture in their own environment. And I think that maybe it does sound silly to say out loud, but it's good that you're taking action. You're taking, autonomy back.
Yeah.
I think that's what we all need to start doing.
Yeah.
And then also be willing to deal with the consequences with it.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, and that's one of those things that it's like truly 100% the individual's choice to make the impact or not. Because we talked about buying things off of Amazon, contributing to gas emissions with driving cars and things like that, where it's like you can't really opt out of that because there's not another system in place to opt into. Yeah. But with something as little as letting the bugs live in your yard on the plants that are supposed to be there.
Yeah.
It's like
that's just an easy thing that we could start doing that would already be changing the mindset of people. And I actually like that you pointed out that like it's hard to opt out of something if there's not something else in place. Because something that I've also been thinking about, and Russell Brand has talked about, is like, if we're going to create new systems, maybe we don't have to burn down the current one and be like, oh shit, what do we do now? And just leave this vacuum for probably the same thing to emerge, right? He says that we should build these systems adjacent. Because if we did actually create something that was like, hey, yeah, you could, drive your car everywhere and, keep putting out emissions, or we can do this thing and build up the, maybe public transit, or just like building up this new idea of community and building up these better feelings of like communion with the earth in general and things like that, then we can create systems adjacent to what we have right now and then move over to it, because then capitalism will just die out.
No, that's a good way to put it. I haven't thought about it like that.
Yeah. Well, because like, I understand the desire to just like burn the whole thing down, because it just gets so frustrating a lot of the times, right?
I still think we should.
I do too, to be honest. I hate get to eat the rich. Like, there's definitely these, like, I have those feelings, but then I also, as soon as you start getting into just the nitty gritty, because since I've actually been very passionate about what we could do to just change the world and change our systems, you end up hitting those things like, okay, what do you do about this? What do you do about this? What do you do about this? And so then I'm realizing like, okay, I really can't just burn it all down because it just fucks people up. I mean, have you ever seen Mr. Robot?
No,
I'll try not to spoil it or anything.
Okay, I'm very uncultured.
No, don't even worry about it. This is just a
tease. Okay.
This is good. So essentially, they find a way to break the system. They find a way to just literally break it, but because they didn't figure out what to do after the fallout, they deal with all these other consequences as a result of it. And those forces that they broke are just building up a way to come back stronger, right? So I think that's something I'm really interested in, is just the ways that we can build systems adjacent to what we have right now. Because like, I don't know, all of the structures that we have right now, all the buildings, the cars, the companies, all of these things are built by people with a common goal and a purpose. So it's like, if we literally just all put that energy to something different, we could do it. Yeah. I really think we could.
No, I agree entirely. And I don't know if the idea when these systems were built was to divide and conquer, but I feel like a very large factor in, needing to continue getting resources from these things was just like the idea of the nuclear family and everyone living in their little house by themselves and their family. And, you know, you might drive 40 minutes away to work when if we just like built the communities that we're currently in, there wouldn't be a need to buy the microphones from Amazon because maybe somebody in town makes them.
Yeah,
you know,
even like what would the need for a microphone be at that point?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You're kind of finding meaning within community because I think we try to think that community isn't really important or like we've transcended it because of how big our society has gotten and like with the internet and things like that. And yet we have way more people feeling more alone, right? So like they're actually yearning for a sense of community. I think that's kind of what another thing that I wanted to talk to you about is like, have you heard of localization and kind of how that would help restructure our society?
I have not.
It's this new thing that I've been learning, so I'm not even like close to an expert on it, but it's just the idea that right now our systems are built to be centralized, specifically like agriculture, right? What we're doing is we're colonizing all of this space for agriculture, and in doing so, we're just destroying all of the land and all the environment in that space. We're not creating healthy diets at all, so we're hurting people. And then we're also we're taking away autonomy from individuals to actually like build their own lives. Kind of an example that I've heard of with this aspect is like growing strawberries in the Middle East, right? We'll have American companies go in and own that space and create all these farms to, you know, make to grow strawberries that they then export to be consumed in the U.S. So all of that work and all of that labor that's happening in that area, these people that are actually there working on the land are not getting anything from it, but like shitty wages, because that's why it moved there in the first place, because it's cheap, right? Whereas localization would say those people are there, they get to reap the benefits of whatever they're cultivating. And the reason I'm kind of interested in your opinion on it is because I feel like you've already started like engaging in localism in a way. Just based on like what you've been doing with your property, where you've been able to, you know, kind of grow the things you want, leave what is already growing there. So I guess I just kind of wanted to feel out your opinions on that and what you think we could build with it. It's probably hard since you're getting like a very very limited knowledge from it from me right now. But
well, and it's like an idea that I have. I don't know. You ever have ideas and you're like, wow, I'm a genius, and then you come across someone who's like, oh yeah, that's called localization. You're like, oh shit, really?
It's already a thing.
That's great. Sorry, repeat the question.
No, you're good. I'm wondering what you think of localization and whether you think we can do it, whether you think there's even going to be a desire for it.
I don't know if there would necessarily be a desire at this point in time. I feel like anything that is a revolution in a way takes time to build traction. But I think that localization is the only way to combat capitalism or whatever, you know, this is that we have currently. I know, like, personally, once I feel like a part of the reason localization might not be as attractive or attainable to a lot of people is because that takes money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it takes time.
Yeah. When I began dancing, it was like, you know, I'm not making, like, dumb money. But I'm making dumb money compared to what I grew up in and you know, stuff like that. So I had all of this money all of a sudden and I was like, wait a second, I can buy local now? Like, you know, and I just like, I would take probably 50% of my earnings every month and go and just spend it in places where I was like, I want these people to have my money because we need, you know, the community.
You need to build it up.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, for instance, near where I live, a corporate hardware store was recently built, like not even a mile from like a family-owned one.
Nice.
And like, you know, just to kind of segue into that.
Yeah.
And like me and my family who lives nearby and my neighbors are all like, we will never shop it.
Never shop there.
We'll never shop there.
Keep it local.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's been hard for me is like, I sort of saw the problem with capitalism and I saw it like fundamentally wrong just to be having transactions in general. It was weird. Like it was just almost like poisonous. And I just like kind of got to that and I was like, we shouldn't be trading or like buying anything. And obviously that's not the answer. That's not how it's going to work. But I like the idea of just focusing more on growing your local economy and keeping it in your local economy, right? And I'm wondering if that's just going to be the main catalyst for change. Like if we can actually just give a shit about our communities.
I think that, well, I mean, humans are pack animals. And as much as we still run in packs for the most part, just to kind of tie back into the earlier topic in our conversation about intimacy and people searching through it for it and trying to find connection through the internet. Yeah. And it's like, I think that the internet is the symptom of, I mean, the internet started out as something, a great new invention.
Yeah,
you know, like
it is. It is what it is, right?
It definitely disconnected people. And because we find almost like a pseudo connection through the internet, and we also use the internet to buy things from overseas, you know, we use the internet to invest in cryptocurrency and, you know,
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not shitting on cryptocurrency by any means. If it's, you know, if the government doesn't know about your money, that's great. Like,
that's all the more power to you.
But, you know, it's just like, we're so disconnected now because of the things that have been put in place for us to buy. And I think that a lot of those things were created with the idea that it would bring more connection. Yeah. So, you know, like I know that during the 90s, there was this like almost some type of renaissance where, you know, the internet was coming out and everyone thought it was going to become a global, you know, it was going to create a global village. Yeah. And it was going to be a revolution of its own. Yeah. But then it turned into something that was much more divisive and even used to, you know,
isolate people.
Yeah, isolate and separate us from, you know, people far away, but even people close to you.
Like, you're sitting right next to you and you're just sitting there looking on your phone, right?
I mean, even like aside from that, like family units where somebody's like, QAnon, dude. And the other one's like,
I don't want to engage with that, right? Yeah. That's a good point. And I think that's really interesting, the idea of like a global village. And I'm wondering if the reason that the internet didn't just go ahead and solve that problem and create a global village is because we didn't actually change what humans are fundamentally after, right? And I think that's probably the aspect of real systemic change that people don't want to talk about is kind of, we have to decide as a species what we want to be doing with existence, right? Because for me, it's turning more into like this sort of spiritual understanding of what this existence needs to be like, you know, because any new system will have to understand the fact that, yes, we do have to trade goods and services in order to accomplish certain goals, right? Yeah. But if the goals of our society is trading goods and services, then we'll never really find meaning. Because I think that's kind of where we're at right now, right?
I mean, like, just to touch on that, I think that self-sustainability is definitely like a very good goal to have, to you know, not have to do the bartering and not have to, you know, do any of that. And you would still do that in like a tribe-like unit, just to tie into humans being pack animals again. But I feel like that pack in itself is too small, and that's why, you know, humans want to make connection, and that's might be partially the reason there's a drive to barter and exchange services. And
it's because we're kind of using that as a connection in a way. I like that. And I also like the idea that just how we are pack animals, we are searching for connection and things like that. And I guess I'm wondering how we can actually establish like a vision? Like what could everyone literally agree upon, you know, and say like, this is what humanity should be working towards?
I think that the problem we'd run into with that is it's been in every civilization and culture since the beginning of time. Yeah. But there's some people that won't agree with anything but power for themselves. And I don't know.
That's a good point.
What breeds that, or if it's, you know, like some type of neurological inherent like illness force. Thing. Oh, no, you know, there's like sharks that go rogue, and those are the ones that like eat people or whatever. Yeah, there's some science behind that. I swear. I can't explain it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
You know, it's like maybe like some type of a defect, but for whatever reason, I think it's an infectious defect too. But you know, it's just like this hunger for power or whatever it else might be. Yeah. And I mean, like, I remember before I was making money, you know, the idea in my mind of what, like, being happy was to, start a business. Like, when I started Canna Mother, I was like, I'm going to start this business, and I'm going to make it fucking massive. I'm going to turn it into an MLM, and that might fuck people over, but I'm going to have
lots of money.
Yeah, I'm going to have lots of money. And then I got to a point where I had enough money to be comfortable, and then I was like, wait,
what do I do now?
Maybe I don't want that. I mean, it wasn't even like that. It was like this feeling of just like being content and being like, wow, like I'm happy, and I don't need to
turn this into like a monolith or anything. I like that. Yeah. I like that you had that experience. That's really valuable. We need more people to have that. In terms of like, how do you deal with people that are inevitably going to seek power and, you know, just more and more selfish drives?
I think
it's necessary. Sorry. I was just going to say, I think that's a good question. That's definitely something we need to address, right?
And I think that a lot of this, like, fascination with power, money, notoriety, or whatever, comes from some type of like scarcity mindset where, you know, people who, I don't know, like in my experience personally, it was like I grew up in scarcity,